Hi, this is my director's commentary for my trailer, which is called Revenants, as part of my media coursework. I'm going to be stopping and starting the trailer quite a bit to explain each individual section, so yeah, that's how it's going to happen. Yeah, I'll start the trailer. Right, so this title wasn't actually added until the second draft of my trailer, but it was added because from the feedback from the first draft, it was clear a lot of people didn't really understand what the trailer was about or what the term Revenant meant. So I've added it in here at the beginning as a title, which is pretty much the definition of Revenant. I've put the title in Trajan Pro, which is the font that I've used throughout the rest of the trailer, so it has a lot of continuity in it and it doesn't look like it's just randomly smashed in there.
Is waiting for you will prove untrue. Then what will you do? Maybe you'll sit and
Okay, so that was the main 30-second opening of my trailer, which I'm actually really pleased with. Okay, so let's talk about the shots in this section. Throughout, I've used a variety of different zooming in shots, which are pretty slow, which I filmed on the camera and a dolly, which I made out of Lego. But it actually came out really, really well and looks very professional. Um, those shots are typical of horror films, and I use them specifically because of that, as they build tension and they sort of bring the camera nearer to something that you don't really want to see, which I really wanted to get across in this part. Dispersed between some of these zooming in shots, I've put in a few violent images of blood in a bathtub, the tap of the bathtub. These are very conventional elements of a horror trailer, because they add a quick shock and they sort of build up the tension that's been built up already with the zooming in shots, until a point where either it climaxes or there's an anticlimax. A trailer that uses a technique kind of like this is the trailer for a Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which doesn't use it exactly the same way, but it uses flashes from a camera to create the same effect. And yeah, I think this bit worked very, very effectively, and even when I watch it, it does give me a slight shock every time. The music in this section comprises of different bombs and bangs and string layers, and also a recorded track from the Ink Spots called Maybe. I wanted to use this track because it sounds very vintage and old-fashioned, and I wanted to play something out of the record player, and that's the sort of music I wanted to play because it's quite nostalgic and not happy, but it's not a dark song. So that also works in the sense that I'm placing it over images that are quite dark and quite sinister. So it gives that sense of juxtaposition and contrast, which emphasizes the horror element. At the end of this 30-second opening, I've challenged the conventions and the usual norms of a trailer in a horror genre, by actually showing the main ghost. I did this because I wanted to sort of give an impact straight away, and also it's a lot of fun to make the audience jump. After the ident of my fake production company, which I created on After Effects using a simple image from Google and some text, my first title is shown, which says 8 years later. This title uses the Trajan Pro font like the first opening title in the trailer, and I've textured it with a texture that I found on Google of a cracked wall, to give it that grunge feel and make it seem a little bit more horror than just a white plain font. This title says 8 years later because I'm trying to show that what's about to happen is 8 years later, and I thought a title would be the easiest way to show that transition in time rather than a voiceover, because a voiceover would seem a bit too Hollywood action film, which is not what I wanted. I wanted a more independent film style, that would suit the horror genre. What? So she just disappeared?
Yeah. Well, that's what they're telling me anyway. But you know, she left me in this place, so that's all right.
After the title, we move to a short montage of clips which show the setting, which is the house, and then we move on to a shot of our main character. With the shots that show the setting, I purposely wanted to use a fluid, smooth movement in both of them to try and get across the sense of calm or unusual calm before the storm, and to really show the setting without any horror elements in it. These shots are pretty typical in this subgenre of horror, as they show the viewer what's happening and where it's happening quickly and efficiently without giving too much away. I managed to get these shots pretty easily by just using the tripod that I had and lowering the head down in the first shot to get a smooth lowering movement, and in the second shot just placing it on the banister and turning it to get the revolving overhead view. The music in this section I actually created myself on GarageBand with a piano and some string layers. I wanted to keep it quite simple with just one striking note on the piano to sort of give a eerie, creepy feel and not go too overboard, so to go with the theme that there's a bit of calm before the storm. With the audio layer of the main character speaking, I overlapped it onto the clips before, just to give it more of a sort of montage feel and to make it flow a little bit quicker so I could get it done in a quicker space of time. We now come to the second main title in my trailer, which reads From Visionary Director Nick Wilson. With this title, I use the same After Effects file as with the first one to keep the continuity exactly the same, so the textures are exactly the same and the font size is exactly the same. This title is one that I think is quite typical of any trailer, whether it's horror or not, because it shows the director so that the viewers can understand whether they really want to see the film, judging on the director's previous works if they've seen them. In this case, I'm not a real director, but still it looks just as good.
You'll think of me when you are all alone.
Oh, God. This part was probably my favourite part of the whole trailer, and it was actually the easiest part to film. I wanted to have a section between the short opening montage about where the setting is and the final montage where something would happen that would build tension. So I thought the easiest way to do it would be by putting the character in a situation where we just follow him and then there'll be music that was building up and everything would come to a climax and then just stop. The shots I've used here are incredibly typical of the horror genre and are probably used in about 90% of horror films because they just really help to show the emotion of the character and build the tension, because we're following his face and it's up close and personal and you're being forced to watch something that you don't really want to watch. So when I was filming it, we took two shots, one from behind and one from in front, of Jack the actor walking forward, and I cut between them to show the different angles and just to really build up the tension even more. I really liked how this bit came out because it's so simple and yet it is probably the tensest part of the trailer, combined with the music that I used with a crescendo of string layers and a very low drone of a bass noise throughout. It just really worked perfectly and I couldn't have wanted it to come out any better. At the end of this section, I have Jack the actor saying, "Oh God," really subtly and quite scared, over a black screen. I chose to do this because I wanted to have some mystery around what he was saying it about, as to not show that much about the trailer or the film as a whole. I think this works a lot better than having him say it in camera because, as I said, you don't really know anything about it and it could be taken from any part of the film, so there is a real air of mystery. Okay, so this is the main big climactic part of my trailer. It's the main montage where there's just random clips put to a kind of beat to show random parts of the film and sort of entice the viewer. And I'm really pleased with how it came out. For each little clip, I filmed quite a bit of footage and then just cut out literally about zero point 0.5 of a second worth of clip to put in to the actual final thing. And I wanted them to be really, really quick so that you had enough time to see what was happening, but you didn't really have enough time to understand it unless you go back and watch it again. With each clip, I also wanted to have a key element of the film being shown. So the first clip, we have the ghost walking down the stairs with a weapon. We've got a shot in there of the bathtub, which links to the bit at the beginning of the trailer where it flashes to the bathtub. We've got a shot of someone hanging, and we've got a shot of a demon. These are all quite sinister themes and quite sinister elements, so I really wanted to bring these out in this section and sort of make the whole trailer a little bit darker in this whole bit. In these shots, even though they are only about 0.5 of a second long, they probably have the most editing done to them out of any of the shots in the actual trailer. The hardest one to work on was actually the demon face, which I used my brother as an actor for. I just shot him standing still in the corridor with a light from below to put shadows on his face, and then I took the clip into After Effects and I masked around his eyes, put a white layer in it so that he didn't have any eyes. Then I just darkened the layer completely and textured his face a little bit. So that shot came out really well, and I'm really pleased with how kind of terrifying this shot looks. The music in this section came out very well, and I'm very happy with it. I used a crescendo on a string layer throughout the whole thing in the background, which starts relatively low and ends up quite high before the climax. I also used a few percussion layers which banged some drums each time a clip would come on and come off, so that there's a sort of beat to it. This sort of gave a little rhythm to this section and kept the montage going, but the loud bangs also made each clip a little bit more disturbing because it has more of an impact because it's a loud bang. So that was the main title for the film. It just says the name of the film, Revenants. I did this title the same way I did the previous two. I put it into an After Effects project and just used exactly the same sizes and textures and fonts as the first one to give the same textured feel. The only difference with this one is that it's fading in from a blur and it flickers when it comes on. I did this so that it looks a little bit more creepy and it gives a sort of unnerving feel, which when accompanied with the very low drone in the background makes you feel very uncomfortable when watching it. I'm very happy with how this title came out because it's really, really simple, but it's incredibly effective, and that's the sort of effect I was going for. I put this title after the montage section because I wanted it to build up, build up, build up, and then suddenly go to nothing and then just show the title as if it's sort of coming out of nowhere. So the viewer sort of gets the shock and then is allowed a bit of calm where you understand what the film's called. One of my favourite parts of the trailer happens after the main title, and it includes the main character looking in a mirror and then shutting it to reveal the ghost behind him. This is an incredibly overused technique in any horror film, and there are thousands of films that use it. It really is pretty much just an essential element in any horror film. It's a really good technique to use because it gives you a jump scare which fits in with the horror elements, but it also gives you a chance to show something very normal and then suddenly whip to it being incredibly dark and ghostly and horrible. It was actually really, really hard to set up the shot because I had to set up the camera in a way that you couldn't see it in the mirror, but you could get him in it and also get the ghost in when the mirror is shut. So I placed the camera behind Jack's shoulder and we had to actually put the ghost in shot and then move the mirror around that instead of the other way around. But it came out really, really well, and I'm so happy with how it turned out eventually. Over the top of this actual video, I put a very loud bang, which was from a Pro Scores pack, and it was just a bang of percussion, just to sort of emphasize the scare moment. And this cut on to the next Coming Soon title, which again I used the same file for After Effects as the other titles, so the continuity was the same and all the fonts and stuff were the same. So yeah, quite a scary end to the trailer, and I'm really happy with how it turned out.